Well, for more, Zoe Alexander joins us now. Her brother Nick Alexander was the only British citizen to be killed at the Bataclan. Zoe, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to start by asking you, of course, what your reaction to this verdict is.
Hi, good morning. I'm still processing, to be honest with you, the sentences that were handed down yesterday. We waited a long time for the verdicts. They were delivered quite quickly. And I'm still kind of processing my thoughts about them. My initial reaction was that largely they were fair. I think I felt quite surprised that there was no option of parole for Salah Abdeslam. But as you said in your report, this is just this is not the end of this process. There's still an appeals process to go to. So I'm sure there's still many moving parts here, and until we get the full picture.
So, Abdeslam, of course, got the toughest possible sentence. But with respect to some of the other defendants, is there anything else in the verdict that you would have liked to see that didn't happen?
I can't say that, in all honesty, that there was anything else that I would have liked to have seen happen that didn't happen. When you embark on something of this nature, you put your full faith into the democratic process, and that all of the evidence that's at hand is going to be considered carefully. And I do believe that that did take place. We watched a huge process of democracy take place over the last 10 months.
You decided to personally address Salah Abdeslam during the trial and actually mention some of the things that you guys share in common. What did you say to him, and was it important for you to be able to speak to him directly?
It felt very powerful for me to be able to speak to him directly, to connect with him as a human, as a human sibling who was bereaved on the very same night that I was. His brother also had a very violent and brutal death like mine did. His parents have also lost their child, and I wanted to pull together, the commonalities between us, not the things that divide us and lead to these huge fractures and intolerances between us. I wanted to bring it back to that human level.
Did you sense a reaction from him?
I was not allowed to look at him, so I'm not sure that he had a reaction. But I understand that throughout the whole of the testimonies, he was seemingly attentive to them. So I hope so. I mean, even if there was no visible reaction, there's no way that during the last 10 months of sitting in that room, hearing the testimonies of the survivors, of the victims' families, of the first responders, there's no way anybody could have failed to have some human emotion attached to them.
Zoe, you've spoken several times about justice without hatred. What does that look like to you in the future? And did this trial live up to that expectation?
I think this trial was almost the most shining beacon of that, in a way. When you have the juxtaposition of such barbarism on one side and in the home of this huge democracy, this democratic process that it was, in my opinion, conducted with great humanity and great dignity for all involved, including the defendants. I think that you can't wish for a better example of justice without hatred.
Shortly after the attacks, you created the Nick Alexander Memorial Trust. Could you tell us more about it and what its aims are?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my family felt very clear that we wanted to take away a bit of control from the accused, from the terrorists, whoever created the awfulness of that night, and that we would get to decide how Nick's story ended, not them. So we wanted to kind of encapsulate the person who he was, and not Nick Alexander, the victim. And he was a really fun-loving guy. He, had a great joie de vivre. He loved music and he loved people. So we created a trust whereby we could give musical equipment and musical instruments to disadvantaged communities, and kind of create something future-looking for him from the fractured pieces that were left on the November the 13th.
What is it that you would like the world to remember about your brother, then, Nick Alexander?
Anybody that met my brother would never forgot him. He was a great guy, and he had a great belief in justice, but he never laid a hand on anybody. He was a hugely tolerant person. He had no hatred for anybody, and I want him to be remembered as a peace-loving, fun-loving man.
What a great message of optimism in such tragic circumstances. Zoe Alexander, thank you so much for joining us today on France 24.
Thanks for having me.